Welcome to another episode of Rooted and Rising. I'm Kelly Beckert. My co-host, Melissa Ordaz, is not here today, but I'm joined by someone else who's very special to me, my son, Zach Beckert.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, son. If you're new to the podcast, Rooted and Rising is a space dedicated to Christ followers sharing their God stories. It's an opportunity for us to pause and reflect on God's goodness in our lives and to be able to share that with other people. And so I'm super excited that you're here joining us, ready to answer our 10 questions.
Bring them on.
But before that, we like to start usually with some kind of a game. We often do what we call As Heard on the Playground, but we are launching a new something on our socials. It's Playground Diaries, and it's where we interview our Heights Christian School students, preschool through olders, and ask them questions and kind of hear their wisdom, hear their humor, hear their responses. We asked them this time, what do you like most about school? So let's give a listen and see what they had to say.
Let's hear it.
Hello. What I love about school, I love to dance. Play on the playground. I love to do recess. Play with my friends. I like to go to the library. iPads. We get to do art to go to the recesses. I love to play. Mostly play tag. We get to use markers. What was the question again?
Kids are cute.
Yep, out in the mouths of babes. I think an age-old answer is recess, right?
Yeah, you gotta love the recess.
You gotta love the recess.
Go with recess.
Or what was the question again? We're taking a quick break.
Hey, are you going to summer fun this year? Probably not. I'm just gonna stay home and have fun. School is kind of exhausting.
But summer fun is fun. It's like recess all day.
Recess all day?
Yes, there are different zones.
What kind of zone?
Game zones, craft zones, science stuff, even robotics.
Robots?
Yep, and you get to play outside too. You can stay in your favorite zone as long as you want.
What? You can just stay?
Or run to another one.
My mom said stuff can be expensive.
My mom says I'm worth it.
Whoa.
And you don't have to go every day or every week. I think they even help families who are on a budget. And I get to see my school friends all summer.
That actually sounds kind of fun.
And I made a bunch of new friends too.
What else do you do?
We learn about Jesus, go on field trips, have water play days.
Anything else?
Pizza Friday!
Wait. Pizza?
Yes, pizza.
Okay, that sounds awesome.
Heights Christian School Summer Fun Program. Recess Reimagined.
To find out more about our summer fun program, visit heightschristianschools.org/summerfun. And now back to the podcast. All right. Well, we're going to ask some questions about your roots and about your rising. So we're going to start with your roots. Are you ready to dive in?
I'm ready to dive in.
Okay. For those that don't know you as well as I do, can you talk about where you grew up and how did that shape your view of God?
Yeah, I grew up in Southern California in a Christian home, two parents who loved the Lord. It was just me and my sister and you guys. And I think growing up in a Christian household was obviously very informative for how I grew up, and that I always was hearing about, the Lord and the love of God. And I was fortunate in that was a truth that I got to grow up in. And I didn't really have a life that I really remember outside of knowing God. And so I think that's something that's easily taken for granted. And I'm sure I often do. Like, it's just something that you're not always aware of, even if it's always informing your life. And so, super grateful for the that gift that the Lord gave me, that I was able to grow up in such a loving household that really, from a young age, I got to see what loving the Lord looked like from not only you and Dad, but you brought us to, we went to church every Sunday. I grew up in Christian schools, and so really from every angle, I got to hear and know more about the Lord and Jesus Christ.
And so, when did you decide to dedicate your life to Christ?
For me, is also, I feel like, trickier than it is, or probably should be, and is for a lot of Christians, that I really don't remember a time like not believing in the Lord. So like when I actually decided to give my life to the Lord, like I remember a lot of times, like I remember specifically, I don't know if you'd even recall this, but we had this VHS tape of, I think it was like a school play, and me and Melissa used to watch it, and it was about the rapture. And I remember, like, the whole thing's about how this one girl got left behind. And then whenever we watched that movie, me and Melissa would always just start praying and like make sure that we were saved, just in case, last time didn't take, we would rededicate. So I remember things like that where.
But that wasn't the Left Behind movie series.
No. It was. Yeah, I don't know what it was exactly, but the way I remember it, and I wish Melissa was here just so she could speak into this, but it was like a recording of a high school, I think, doing a play about the rapture. And I think it was called You've Been Left Behind, is what I'm pretty sure the play was called.
Yeah. Well, the rapture, I mean, that culturally, that was so relevant back then. People were talking about it all the time. And I was saying earlier that I remember Melissa being like 2 and, still with her baby talk, walking around telling strangers, the rapture's coming, the rapture's coming.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that was a little before my time, so I can't speak into that. But yeah.
I know that when we asked Melissa this question, she said that she kind of struggled with feeling like she doesn't necessarily have a bold testimony, right? Kind of similar situation, having grown up in a Christian home, having grown up in the church and around all of that. But I feel like I remember, like, even with Teacher Pam, I feel like I remember a time where you, like, in a group with your class, had an opportunity to like raise your hand and say, I want to follow Jesus. Like, do you remember that, or is that?
I honestly don't. And okay. I feel kind of, bad. I feel like I should have this moment where everything changed and I gave, but that's not really my story. And that's not how.
No, I was just curious if you remembered it.
Yeah.
I think when we were going through the scrapbook semi-recently, there's like a certificate in there that she gave you, like on that day. So you could look it up and see what day
I can look it up. Yeah.
I think it's so much, I committed my life to Christ as a young adult. And so I think, obviously, having lived a lot of years without the Lord, making all the, I think it is very different when you have the opportunity to do that at a young age and you just grow up in it.
Yeah.
Which is different from my parents are Christian, so of course I'm Christian.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so who taught you how to pay attention to God in your life?
I think that the honest answer to that is largely you and Dad. From a young age, I mean, the first time I ever traveled out of California was when we went to China and then Mongolia to visit your good friends, the Shooks, who were missionaries there. And so we went there to, support them in their missions. And then for years, I don't remember how long, but in my head, it was from like maybe ages 5 to 8 or 9. We went to Mexico every Christmas to go outreach to the orphanage there. And so I feel like I always had a great example of like God's love and what that looks like and how you can put it into action and put motion behind the words.
So we used to go on Christmas Day, and we did do it for about 5 or 6 years. And the first opportunity we got to go, I really wanted to go. And it was the year before we actually said yes. And I said no, because we had grandma, and I didn't want to leave grandma on Christmas Day. And I really, really, really wanted to go, but I also really felt like I can't leave my mom on Christmas Day. And the next year, this is what God did. Grandma was too sick to leave. So grandma called and said, I'm just going to stay home. She didn't even want us to come over. She felt really sick that day. And Debbie Strom, who was a friend of ours at the time, had been going and had gathered an extra carload full of stuff. And so she called and said, I know you probably are going to say no, because I understand and respect the thing with your mom, but we have a whole extra car full of stuff that we just need somebody to drive. And I said, I can't believe it. My mom is like, I can go, but I want to go only if my whole family can go. And she's like, well, of course. And it was like an Eldorado, or it was some big car. And we drove down there. And that was the first time that we went. And that was, I think, the only time we went with them. I think after that, we sort of picked up the baton, and then we started bringing other people with us every year. And once we did it the first year, my mom was like, well, you guys have to go. Like, it was just a done deal. Yeah. But that was like such a cool
that's
God
incredible.
thing.
I didn't even know that. That's crazy that's how the first year was orchestrated.
Yeah, so cool.
That is cool.
Do you have a habit or a hobby that you do that feels amazingly sacred?
This is a funny question for me, especially at this point in my life. I just recently had my first child. The last months, or honestly, just about a year, has really just been taking care of my family. And there's really not a lot of time for much else other than I'm working and then, taking care of our little girl. And so, I used to have hobbies. I used to do things. It was great. Honestly, a lot of my time has been just going into family, which, is obviously also, I find sacred. And so just being able to spend time with my family, with my wife, and with my little baby girl as she's growing up. And I'm just so excited that I do get to spend as much time as I am able to with my family right now.
Yeah. I have no greater joy than to watch you be a husband and a dad. You're an amazing husband. You're an amazing dad.
Thanks, Mom.
That little smirk. I remember that so much as you were growing up. Every compliment I give you is like, thanks, Mom. Like, every compliment's obligatory, but it really isn't. And one day you will know what it feels like to watch your child then become a parent. I mean, it's just pretty amazing. So you're blessed with an amazing wife and a beautiful daughter who is my most beautiful granddaughter. Okay, what was a pivotal moment in your faith journey, and how has that shaped who you are today?
I think one of the biggest things that stands out to me is Calvary Chapel Downey. We went to Calvary Chapel Downey from the whole time I remember as a child. I don't remember a time before Calvary Chapel Downey for me. We went to school there. We went to church there.
Daddy and I got married there. And we were there.
So, and that was, where I went to school. That's where we went to church. That was our community. That was all of my friends. That was everybody you worked with. It was literally everybody. And the Lord called us away from that. And it was a big deal for our family.
Yeah.
And it was hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think your faithfulness, though, you and Dad, and to the call, I think that is something that really stands out.
This is a different story, but it kind of ties. But do you remember the year you and Sissy gave me for Christmas that metal sign that says peace? Do you remember any of this, or were you just too young?
I remember the sign.
So
I do remember that.
It's on our bookshelf to this day, right? And it's just a metal letters that spell the word peace. And you guys thought that was so funny. I'm sure Dad was behind it, but you thought it was so funny when you gave it to me, because when you guys were little, life is chaotic. When you have little kids, life is chaotic. And, you guys are exhausted right now with Ruby. That ends like in 30 years. You know what I mean? So, but when life is chaotic, like I used to always say, I just want a moment of peace. I just want a little peace. Mm-hmm. And so you guys were so excited to wrap this up and give me a little peace, But the reality is, life is hard enough. And then I feel like following the Lord is not easy. And a lot of times in Christian circles, I think the invitation to follow Christ is he will be the fixer of all of your problems, right? And the reality is that's just not true. Like, it puts a whole different perspective on how things that are tough and how you navigate them. But
I think more accurately, though, it's not true in the way you might think, right? Because like he is fixing it, and he's fixing maybe problems you didn't even know about or needed fixing, and but it's seldom how we would have liked it to be fixed or what we would want to happen.
Well, and so that was such a pivotal time, and leaving, as you said, like that was our world, and so that was really hard. But I don't know that I've shared this story here. But, God used you because Daddy and I knew we were supposed to leave. And I think we were afraid. Like, we didn't want to pull you guys out of school, and we didn't want to leave both of our jobs, and it was our church and it was our friends. And we also understood the culture there that leaving would likely come with some costs socially for us, right? And so we didn't leave, and we didn't leave for probably at least a year. And one night you had a bad dream. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
And so you had a bad dream, and you came and woke me up in the middle of the night, and you were like in the end of third grade or the beginning of fourth grade. And you said, you were very upset. And so I was calming you down, and I said, do you want to talk about it? And you said, and you told me this dream. And basically in your dream, we were being held captive, but God had set us free, and God had said, go. And I remember still to this moment, you looking up into my eyes and saying, and you and Dad wouldn't go. And me and sister, we didn't understand, let's go. God said go, and you won't move. You wouldn't move. And literally that moment, I knew that was a word from you to me. And I woke Dad up and shared the dream with him, and we both immediately knew. And it was very shortly after that we actually left. And it was a really difficult season, but it was all the good things in our life that followed that were because we were willing to step into a really hard something. And so I felt really bad for you guys for a long time. And then I watched you grow up into these amazing young adults who understood from a young age that following Christ could sometimes cost you everything. And I was forever grateful, so.
It really is incredible, God's provision. Because when people ask me where I went to school or whatever, I often like to say that I was homeschooled, and that's only because in that transition period from Calvary to Heights, there was a month where I was homeschooled for. So I feel like I'm
I was a terrible homeschool mom.
I loved it. I had so much fun.
I know you did. I was such a bad homeschool mom to you. I was so vulnerable. I felt so guilty, honestly. I was having such a hard time with all of the change that we had thrust upon you guys. And so, I was the homeschool mom that would give you assignments, and you would tell me your hand hurt. And so I would do the assignments for you. And
we had a good system. I don't know why more teachers aren't, ready to step in when your hand cramps up.
Yeah, God saved us. God saved us in that. And then, led us to Heights Christian. And that's been such a huge blessing in our lives, and we would have missed that because I would have stayed. I think I would have stayed put if I could have stayed put. So, okay, well, that was a lot. What part of your faith has taken the longest to grow roots?
I think it's honestly something that I still struggle with. And I think it's really easy in general, and specifically for me, to get comfortable. And I know a saying that you often said, because your grandma often said it to you, is God can't drive,
can't steer
a parked car. Thank you. And I think that it's so easy for me to just park the car. I feel like it's really hard for me to just step knowing that God's in control and he's going to take care of the next step, even if I don't, when I can't see the vision, right? And when I can't see where that step is leading me or what that next step is, it's really hard for me just to move And I feel like that's something that the Lord has been working on in me, and something I still need to grow in. And it's been tough, but I feel like I've been trying to just move because, I feel like comfortability is literally like the last thing that like the Lord calls us. We're never supposed to be comfortable. And so when you're willing to live in that, I feel like it's just a detriment to yourself and to, everybody around you who you could be impacting for the Lord.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. And I've definitely seen you grow so much in that since you met Julia and definitely with your family and baby and all that. I think it's scary, and I think the other thing about that saying, because I do say it a lot and I feel like I try and use it a lot, but I feel like finding the balance because, you also don't want to be reckless in life, right? And so trying to navigate the line between being responsible, but not really letting the lack of vision for what's ahead hold you back from what God has called you to do. And really that's, I think, what my grandma was always trying to say is like, be courageous enough to step out. And also in that, be courageous enough not to be afraid of failing or not to be afraid of making a mistake because God is gracious and he will gently redirect you. It kind of ties back to even what I was thinking about how God sees, knows, and responds to our hearts. And I love the fact that, God knows when I'm trying to get it right. And so his response is different than if I have no regard for wanting to do right and I just do what I want to do. Even though outwardly they can look very similar to people, but God sees and knows our hearts. And so I feel like when we want to get it right, he responds the same way you would respond to your daughter, the same way I respond to my grandchildren who are doing their best to get it right, but getting it terribly wrong still, and how we just redirect it. So is there anything that you've had to unlearn in your faith and what has replaced it?
I think one of the downsides of growing up in a Christian household and in the church and in Christian schools, I think that I got like really arrogant, and I think I felt like I was a better Christian than everybody else. And like just looking at actions and looking at and really kind of superficial, honestly, just like really judgmental towards other people and not Christ-like at all, honestly, not like understanding or loving or empathetic, or like everybody is on their own journey, right? And everybody's journey looks completely different. And just because I was privileged to know these truths about the Lord earlier than somebody else doesn't make me better than them, doesn't make me a better Christian than them. It just, makes us different people at different points in life. I think I was like really weirdly judgmental towards other people and Christians, and like I knew how God called us all to live, and if you weren't doing it how I thought you should be doing it, then like you're not a good Christian. Like, I hate to be the bearer of bad news here, but there's so much that that we're unaware of, and like so much like you can't possibly know what somebody's actually going through. And the Lord doesn't ever call us to judge anybody ever. Like that's literally not in the Bible. What we are called to do is love them. I've tried to, at the very least, replace a lot of judgment that I've had with just love, and just like trying to meet people where they're at, and realizing, that we're all going to look different, and that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting. One of the things that I think culturally a lot of people wrestle with right now is there's so many people that don't know they don't have all the pieces to anything, right? Because I feel like that awareness alone really sort of holds me back from jumping too far in my conclusions about things, right? Because you just recognize like, this is sort of how it hits me. This is what I think based on what I know. But more importantly, I know there's so much I don't know. And I know that personally, when I'm in a position where I'm making decisions and being second guessed or being questioned or have anybody sort of putting their judgment on me, there's always this part of me that feels like, I wish you had enough confidence to know that if you knew what I knew, you would at least understand the decision. You might not agree with that, right? Because sometimes you don't. But like just that awareness that like there's stuff that I know that you don't know. And so you're very worked up about something and quick to tell me that it was a terrible decision. but based on what do you say that, right? And so I think that when you get to the place where you recognize, and I think it comes quickly, and there's so many old adages about this, if we only knew now if we only knew when we were 20 what we know now, right? And so much of that really does center around what we know, what we don't know, and what actually matters. Like those three things sort of come with time, I think. What was the process of you acknowledging it or figuring out that you felt like you were judgy?
I think honestly, and I don't know how controversial some of this is, but you raised me and Melissa in a very hardline, no alcohol type conservative household, right? Where in the Bible, and obviously, context matters, but they drink wine, like alcohol, and that's not to say get drunk, but just if you drink a drip of alcohol, that's not a sin. That doesn't make you a sinner. That doesn't make you a bad person. Right. There's so much context to everything. I think honestly, what I think is I was just kind of like the Pharisees were, where it's just really by the words and by the line, and there's not really room for anything else, including God. Really, you're kind of pushing him out of the equation almost, because you're so intently looking at what the words are and what you think is important. But really, that stuff's not that important. What's important is your heart and where the Lord is in your heart, and so. Well,
we were definitely coming out of a very legalistic culture. Yeah. That's for sure. I remember when Melissa was younger, but I remember her talking on the phone with one of her friends and saying to one of her friends, "I'm not allowed to wear a 2-piece bathing suit." Mm-hmm. That wasn't actually true. Mm-hmm. And so after I asked her, I was like, why did you say that? And she's like, "Well, I'm not." And I'm like, I don't, you could wear a 2-piece. And really what had happened is she had never had a 2-piece, right? And so she always just had a 1-piece. And so she had sort of assimilated okay, that means 2 pieces are bad. Mm-hmm. And I do think that even after we left Downey, there were so many things that we would think, I would be living my life and find myself doing the same thing, being judgy towards certain situations, and then kind of having to step back and go, wait a minute, that's not that bad of a thing. Why is that, So, no, it's kind of interesting to me to hear your spin on it. So,
yeah. And, and obviously there's lines with all this stuff. The Bible does clearly say, don't be a drunkard. So right. If you don't drink any alcohol, you're not going to be a drunkard.
Well,
so
I was thinking when you brought up the Pharisees, one of the best, when we first started sitting under Mike Erie's teaching for that season, mm-hmm. Mike Erie was talking about the Pharisees because they get such a bad rap, right? As being the Pharisees, right? And one of the things that he talked about there is that we are the Pharisees of today, right? These were the followers of the law who were trying to do the right thing. Yeah. And so I remember, and I might botch it up, but the way I remember it is he shared this example about if the law said don't touch the tablecloth, then the Pharisees would really promote do not get within 2 feet of the tablecloth. Right. And you would lose the translation that really the point was don't touch the tablecloth. They would set that boundary because they wanted to set you up to be successful. Mm-hmm. So they knew if you got too close, you might touch it. So we just don't get within 2 feet of it, right? And I feel like that resonates a lot with me because whether it's things that we personally embrace or things that were promoted in the church, that idea of trying to be holy, but to your point, it becomes more about the thing you're trying to do to be holy instead of just God, and being focused on God and allowing God to.
Right. And I think in that, I remember that sermon. And I think in that, though, another thing, which I don't remember if he said this or not, but I think something that's lost is when it's don't touch the tablecloth, right? It was because the tablecloth was holy, right? And it was because we're not allowed to besmirch the holiness of God. Whereas some of that I think gets lost where it's don't get within 2 feet because we said so. And you actually lose the meaning of the tablecloth entirely. Right. And I honestly think that being a Christian and loving is hard. And I think that a lot of Christians oftentimes have the best at heart, I think it really, I really do think saying we're the Pharisees of the time is super appropriate in that, like, I think it's so easy to lose track of the love. First and foremost, I think the Lord calls us to love each other and to love him. And so, and I think that it's easy to say, but it's really hard to do. And I think loving is actually something that's extremely hard to do, that we underplay. Like, it's just like be love or be loving. And it's just like, it's an easy thing to say, but it's really hard to do. And there's a fine line, and really you can err either side.
Right. No, I agree. I mean, that could be we could talk about this for a long time, because I feel like the whole idea of like loving is, again, like, what does that look like? Because the most loving thing to say or do isn't necessarily the thing that makes you feel
right. The nicest.
Exactly. Yeah. And trying to navigate that, because I do think culturally we've kind of taken this full swing, and it concerns me that we're so far over here that love also trumps the sovereignty of God and his word, right? So it's like, love doesn't mean everybody gets to do anything they want whenever they want, right?
I don't think that's what love is, though. So yeah.
No, me either. But it's definitely, I think, what you hear, right? Mm-hmm. Love each other. And if you say something that doesn't make you feel great in that moment, then that's not a loving thing to say or do. And so it's hard. It's hard to navigate it and to know what it's supposed to look like, I think. But is there anything that's small, ordinary, or mundane that recently reminded you of who God is?
Not ordinary or mundane, but small would be my little baby girl. And it really is amazing how the Lord has blessed us and given us different things that we can glimpse him in this world, right? And I think that relationship between your child is one of those very unique things where you just can't appreciate his love for us in a very specific way until you experience it as a parent, and you actually like have that side of it, and you can like see you can just like, I look at my little girl and I'm just so excited for her future and like everything that she's going to do and the Lord's going to use her to do. And like, it's just a love that I haven't experienced before. And so it's been incredible.
Yeah, she is amazing.
Yeah.
Excluding worship music, if you had to pick a song to sum up what God is currently teaching you, what song would it be?
I don't know if I'm really going to answer the question, because I'm not sure if it's what God is currently teaching me, but a song that certainly makes me think about the Lord and his majesty is a song called Grace by Florence and the Machine. And there's a line, there's a few, there's lines in the song. And one of the lines is, Grace, I know you carry us. Grace, I don't say it enough. Grace, you are so loved. And I feel like, we're all just carried by the grace of God. And I feel like it's so meaningful. And then, I feel like just to remember, like God gives us that grace because of how loved we are by him. And so while those lyrics aren't actually about that at all, Florence has a sister named Grace, which the song is actually an ode to her sister. But just when I hear the song, that's just always what it makes me think of, as like just the grace of God and how it, like, I'm literally just carried by his grace, and that he loves me so much that he's willing to pour that out for me. And
it is true. Grace always wins.
Yeah.
I have one question about rising. So as we're getting ready to wrap up, before I ask the last question, let me just ask one other question, which is there anything that you were hoping we were going to talk about today that we didn't touch on? You're kind of a unique situation because you're my son. You also grew up in Heights. You're so supportive of me now and kind of all the things that we're doing with the Jubilee Project and me in this role that is newer to me. And so what has Heights meant to you? And like, how do you feel about Heights? Like, as you think about the legacy that we're trying to build and what we want to continue for in the future?
I feel grateful to Heights in a lot of ways. I feel like it was such a great experience for me growing up. And I think it's something that I didn't realize. I was always in Christian school, so I didn't realize until much later in life what I was being sheltered from. And like, the world's tough, and it can be dark. And so I feel like Heights was always kind of like a light place, and like I could love the Lord and learn to love him better unabashedly, and like and be empowered and supported in that, and so I think that it was really formative, and not to say that you can't do all of that elsewhere, and you're more likely to find more people who share that love for the Lord with you, and create lifelong friendships. And I had a great experience with Heights.
How was it having me and Dad around all the time?
That was another thing that was just par for the course. You guys were also teachers at Calvary. So it wasn't until like my junior year in high school that my dad wasn't coaching me. And you were always on staff at whatever school I went to, including when I was homeschooled. It was fun. Like I hung out at school. You become friends with the other kids whose parents are there who are also always at school. And so like, I had a good time.
As I'm so proud of how you're rising, we're going to close with, what is one reminder about who God is that you'd like to leave everyone with today? God is.
Yeah, I think very simply, the word would be love. God is love to me. And I do want to speak a little bit more onto that. First, I have 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7 here, where it just says, love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. And I think love is often used in different ways. And I think for the most part, I don't really agree with how it's used. I think it's often to express feelings, and which it can. But I think more importantly, specifically, I guess, agape love, which is how God loves us and how we're called to love others. It's love is intentional, and love is a choice. And like all of these things I was saying, it's not just a feeling of patience. It's a choice to be patient. Mm-hmm. It's a choice to be kind. It's a choice not to envy when, other people have things you want. Like, these are all very intentional things. Mm-hmm. And I think the way God loves us, why it's so awesome, why it's so powerful, is because it's a choice. Mm-hmm. And he's not like overwhelmed, which he also might be, with this feeling for us. But like, I think more accurately what it is he's, despite whatever we're doing, he's choosing to love us. Mm-hmm. And like, and I think that's something that we have to remember and try to carry as Christians, is like that intentionality, the choice to love people, even when it's hard, even when it's difficult, which is often going to be, but we're still called to do it.
That's a good word, my son. Proud of you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing your heart. Looking forward to next week when you're going to co-host with me. We're going to welcome Ryan McGuire. So looking forward to that. And for you, I want to just thank you for joining us again. I pray that you have a great week. Pray that you stay rooted in his word and rising to things that are more than you can hope, think, or imagine. Till next time, goodbye. Do you have a funny kid in your life? Do you have a funny story that you'd like to share with us? If so, send it to the Rooted and Rising podcast and look forward to hearing it on a future episode.